Hello and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 35 and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Folks, let me tell you about Patriot Home Services, a reliable company who stands by their work and comes in on time and on budget. Patriot Home Services is located in the Woodlands, Texas, and offers a wide array of services. Cody Dawson, the owner, is a hands-on contractor who will follow through on your project and will leave you having perhaps the best contracting experience you've ever had. Whether you need home additions, remodels, outdoor patios and kitchens, flooring, painting, and much more, one call does it all. Patriot Home Services, 720-745-2568, or visit them online at patriothomeservicesllc.com. That's patriothomeservicesllc.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. One of my favorite people, and I mean that wholeheartedly and sincerely. Combat decorated Marine officer, retired Stuart Scheller, speaks out against the debacle in the Afghan pullout as the culmination of a decades-long and still ongoing betrayal of military members by top leadership, from generals to the commander-in-chief, comes to light. In his new book, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller was the perfect Marine. Battle-tested, a leader, decorated for valor. Yet when the United States acted like the Keystone Cops in a panic, haphazard exit from Afghanistan for political reasons, Scheller spoke out. And the generals lashed out. In fact, they jailed him to keep him quiet, claiming the loss of trust and confidence bestowed upon him by the United States Marine Corps. When the faith and trust is exactly what our generals and even our commander-in-chief betrayed by exercising such reckless and derelict policies. Now Scheller is free from the shackles of the Marine Corps and can finally speak his mind in his new book titled Crisis of Command. He holds our generals' feet to the fire, the same generals who play frivolously with the lives of our servicemen and women for political gain. The same general who lied to political leaders to further their own agendas and careers. Stuart Scheller is here to say that the buck stops here. Accountability starts now. It's time to demand accountability and stand up for our military. With that, we are honored to be joined by retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller. How are you, sir?
Brian, thanks for having me on, man.
The pleasure is all mine. I am honored. You are my spirit animal, and I mean that. A hero in my eyes, a true American hero and a patriot, and the epitome of United States Marine, sir. And like I said, it is an absolute honor. Let's just dive in a little bit really quick here, and then we'll get right into the meat and potatoes here. Can you tell us where you're from?
I just moved back to Ohio. So I'm from Ohio, graduated high school and college in Cincinnati. And, I've been in DC and North Carolina, Camp Lejeune area for the last 17 years. So kind of transit right now.
I was born in Youngstown, raised in San Diego, and moved to Colorado when I was in high school. So I've got some Ohio roots too.
Cool.
A lot of good Marines come out of Ohio there.
Yeah, a lot. Texas and Ohio, I think, have the biggest polls.
Yeah, Florida. Yep. So, sir, I want to know, let's get through, your childhood. You're in high school and you decide to become a U.S. Marine. What kind of path did you take to join the Marine Corps?
I graduated college with no military ambitions. And so when you do that, you got a degree, you're working as a professional, and you decide you want to join the military, you go through, at least in the Marine Corps, the OCC program. So you submit a application and they either accept it or don't. And then if they accept it, you go to officer candidate school for 10 weeks. That's what I did.
And so you go through the OCS program and boom, you are a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps.
That's right.
You served 17 years as a United States Marine. You've served in combat. You've served all over the world. You have led Marines for 17 years. What was your proudest moment of your career?
That's a tough question.
I know there's a lot of proud ones. It could be, like prior to August the 26th. I know that was a proud day too, but let's just say, prior.
That's not my proudest day. That day is probably one of the more significant days, but
significant.
I could give a ton of combat examples, but I'll pick something different. I one time on my first deployment taught college classes on the ship. We were on a MEU. And so the Marines got credit for, we got paid as lieutenants to teach these classes. So I taught an accounting and statistics class. And one of my lance corporals got out and became a public accountant, works for a big public accounting firm, and then shot me an email like 10, 15 years later and said, you shaped my life after the Marine Corps. You were a great teacher and you set me on a course that has now molded my professional life. So stuff like that, the little notes of people's lives that you impact in a positive way is, I think, what it's all about.
And that's exactly what I'm looking for. When you have those proud moments where you can sit back and be a true leader, and help these young Marines on their journey with life as they are going through, the steps as a Marine, and then they can run into a guy like Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller that can teach them accounting and how to live life after the military in a responsible way that will make sense in the civilian world. And you've done just that. And that's a great example, sir. I want to get right to the story here. Let's go to August 26th of 2021. This was the day you posted a video following a suicide bombing attack that killed 11 Marines, 1 naval corpsman, and 1 soldier. 13 lives were lost that day. You stood up not only for the Corps, but you stood up for the entire U.S. military. You stood up for the good of the country. You risked everything as you knew that this would come back to bite you. Before you made that viral video from the desk of your command in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, what went through your mind at that very moment prior to you setting up that phone and engaging in a live social media video for the world to see?
Yeah, it was kind of a string of events. I went into the day not expecting to make a video. And then I was just very frustrated like everybody else. And so then I wrote my frustrations on a Word document. Then I decided somebody needed to say those exact words, and I knew it wouldn't be vocalized anywhere else. And I decided to make a video, but even when I made the video, I wasn't sure I was going to post it. Made the video, left the office, drove back to my house, and really struggled with whether or not I should post it. But obviously, I came to the decision that I should post it. So it wasn't like one moment. It was almost, once the suicide attack happened, it was almost like an 8-hour struggle of what to do that kind of evolved into that video.
Yeah, I can imagine how that felt because, listen, we've all made these videos. We've all made these emails, but they've just been drafts.
Yep.
A lot of people.
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. Everyone tells you, write the angry email and then don't press send, and that's the technique. And
right.
And, I actually was trying to convince myself to go sleep on it. But I knew if I slept on it, I wouldn't do it. Then I wouldn't send it. And I came to the conclusion that it was really important. So I did it.
You're a Marine. So you did exactly what you've been trained to do. And that is send it.
Yeah.
Send it. I like it.
I lit the fuse and ran at them. So we'll see what happens.
Sir, the next video you made, I'm not going to lie. I was watching it and I had anxiety for you. It was that abandoned school bus in an undisclosed location in the woods of North Carolina. It was incredible. It was inspiring. You called for accountability that afternoon, and you had a chessboard in front of you. you had just been released from your command, but you were still an active duty Marine, and you had 3 years left to retire after a 17-year honorable service time. But instead, you went to the drawing board. You strategically designed a blueprint that would see you all the way through the storm that you found yourself in.
Well, no. I'm a chess player, and I'll say with chess, I can't see 4 or 5 moves down the board. You try to, but there's just too many variables. And so you try to one move at a time, anticipate a response, and then you have to be adaptable to react to how it's going to go. So what I decided going into that second video was that any influence or power that I had came from the American people, not from the military, that I needed to resign. I needed to do it publicly, and then I needed to apply pressure on the military. And so that's what that second video was, like where it was going. I mean, if you were to ask me in that moment, I mean, I didn't know. I just knew that I had the moral high ground and I was willing to fight to the end.
You know, there comes a time in our life, and some may not ever experience it, where push comes to shove and you need to stand up for the good of the country. No matter what the cost is, especially as a Marine, you took an oath, and that oath never expires. By doing so, how did you feel when the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps generals and the DOD started coming down hard on you for just wanting some accountability for the recklessness that we saw unfold in Afghanistan?
Well, they came down on me because I was breaking the rules, and they didn't want to hear what I was saying. And so, like, if you were to ask them, it's 2 separate issues. There was a lieutenant colonel that was breaking the rules that needed to be held accountable. But what I was illustrating is that how quickly and aggressively they would hold me accountable and try and silence me and imprison me, but that they didn't have the same courage to do that with obvious failures at the top. And so that's what I was doing. I was illustrating a problem. And, is it frustrating? Of course. But there comes a certain point where it's like you go through the processes, not expecting them to work, but just to document all of them to show, like, look, I did everything I could, and you still wouldn't allow any type of addressing of these issues. And so, I decided to write a book because it's like, I went through all this stuff, and you guys, there's one thing for somebody breaking the rules, but it's another thing that you at no point could address the content of what he's saying. I mean, that's just cowardice. So it's tough, because I love the military and I love the young service members, but they're kind of caught in a broken system right now.
Sure. Absolutely. And, like you had said, you were court-martialed, for violating the Uniform Code of Military Justice. However, I believe they had the wrong guy or wrong guys on trial here. And, what did it feel like to stand in front of a military judge after all that you have been through and sacrificed for this country for 17 years after serving honorably and courageously? And to be honest, you are the hallmark and the epitome of a U.S. Marine. How'd that feel?
The judge was really fair. I mean, he didn't want me to be there. He was scolding the prosecution a little bit. But, I mean, to your point, the commandant sent his personal lawyer to assist the prosecution. So obviously the commandant's lawyer wasn't out there trying any generals because he was completely consumed with trying to hold Lieutenant Colonel Scheller accountable. But, the judge, like I said, was a fair arbiter. And I went in there pleading guilty. So it wasn't even like, it wasn't like a suspenseful trial. Like, what's going to happen? Like, I knew what was going to happen. It was all I had to do was go in there and convince the judge to accept the deal. And the judge couldn't have been, for lack of a better word, cooler in terms of this is crazy. I've never seen anyone in prison for anything like this. There's undue command influence with the general officer who's the adjudicating authority, but also lists himself as a victim. You guys leaked medical documents in his investigation. Those people should be brought to trial. I mean, he just went down the list, and he said, the things you're trying to criminalize, if you actually watch the videos, they put it in a much larger context. And I just saw a Marine officer who up to this point was very good. One of the best service records I've ever seen. And those videos put into greater context of what he was trying to communicate. So quite honestly, the judge, I couldn't have asked for a better one.
Well, that's good. I mean, they still had you on 7 or was it 9 counts?
No, it was 5. A couple of them were
Okay.
like subsets of the 5, but it was like I violated the social media order. I was like unbecoming a gentleman. There's like the 134 catch-all. And it was like contempt towards officials. And there's one other one, but nothing like false official statement, because they couldn't do that. So it was just like a bunch of, this is not how an officer should behave.
Again, you are the epitome of United States Marine, and you've got in your head, you're looking at something that's not right, and something needs to be said about it. Because let's face it, you had millions and millions and millions and millions of people cheering you on from the sidelines. Go, Stu, go. That lieutenant colonel speaking for me, he's given the voiceless a voice. He is saying what everybody has on their mind, but he engaged, and he did it in an honorable way. No fires were set, no nothing. You went in there and you had your mind in a great place, and you, again, had a plan in place, a plan of action in your game of chess, moving 1 or 2 spots at a time to get to where you are today. Now, at any time, did you ever feel threatened by the Marine Corps, or did you ever feel that your life was ever in jeopardy?
No, I don't think the Marine Corps would ever try to do anything to hurt me. I mean, they're very career focused and not warfighter focused, but I don't think it would go to the extent that the Marine Corps would try to hurt me. But there was death threats, but it didn't frighten me. If anything, it only emboldened my actions, because when people start getting really upset, you're onto something. So, and quite honestly, I think the people that submit death threats or have the negative comments today in our society, we've allowed these threatening, loud voices to just influence behavior, because we're just kind of like, all right, fine, whatever. And that has allowed us to drift off course. And so I'm just not going to be one of those persons. I'm old enough and experienced enough to know what's right and wrong. And I don't care what your threats are. Like, I'm going to do what I think is right. And that's what I expect from my leaders. And so that's how I try to carry myself.
Have we lost our military?
Our leadership is astray. We still have the best young talent. We still have the highest defense budget. We still have the best training facilities. I mean, foreign militaries come over to our place all the time because they don't have the facilities. Like, we have a lot of great resources. The leadership has drifted, and it needs to be cleaned up immediately. Otherwise, the system's going to continue to fail.
Now, your new book, Crisis of Command, can you give us a elevator pitch about what this book is about, and what the goal and what the mission and what the message is in this book that you're trying to get out to the American people?
Well, you hit it there at the end. The book's written for the American people, not for the military member. Now, obviously, military members read it and enjoy it because they can resonate with it. But the problem is, since Vietnam, at the end of the draft, the all-volunteer force, there's been a divide between the American people's understanding of the military and the military. And right now, we need to inform the American people, because the military works for them, on the systemic issues that exist. And so I tried to use my very real, raw story to tell a story about how we can get involved and understand, number one, the problems in the military, but number two, how we can fix it.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can our listeners connect with you and get that book?
Well, the book's mostly sold on, it's on Amazon. All books are on Amazon. So we do most of our sales through Amazon, but it's in all Barnes & Noble. It's in all the Books a Million. It's funny, Barnes & Noble, I don't know what their issue is. So like, where the Barnes & Nobles that I'm doing book signings at, they have plenty of books, but it seems like all the other Barnes & Noble only ordered like 1 or 2. And my book just listed number 6 on the bestseller list, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the highest, it's within the top 10 of nonfiction books, and Barnes & Noble usually only has like 1 or 2 on the shelf. So I don't know if Barnes & Noble will be around much longer. Quite honestly, it seems like they're more, anyway, I don't want to bash on them too much, but my followers are having a hard time walking into Barnes & Noble and getting the book. So I don't know if I should just push them to Amazon, Target.com, Walmart.com, but it should be in all the stores. And if you want to support me in other ways, my website is AuthenticAmericans.com. You can see all my old interviews on there. And also all my social media is linked to the bottom of it. But all the 4 platforms that I really post to are Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and those are all at Stuart Scheller.
Awesome. I got another question for you here, and I think that this is an important one here. Where you are today has shown the incredible leader you are, as well as your character. A Marine's Marine, if you will. I call you personally a once-in-a-generation Marine.
Thank you.
You have persevered and have overcome challenging obstacles. You have stood courageously and honorably in the face of adversity and have survived this ordeal that many would have folded and given up. But you never gave up. You kept walking even when that walk was hard. It led you to an abandoned school bus. It led you to some I'm sure to some pretty frightening areas in your head. Like, man, this could get scary. 17 years. I'm not going to retire. They're not even going to give me an honorable discharge. I'm going to get some general under honorable after being a decorated combat veteran here. Again, a man that's giving everything for this country. Walk us through your experience on going through all of that and how you were able to maintain your focus and your strength.
This is a really good question. And you're exactly right. I went to some very dark places in my mind. I was in some very shady places as a guy going through a divorce, losing everything. But I decided a long time ago that I'm never going to be a victim for anything, that I'm a product of my own choices. And veterans oftentimes buy into the victim mentality, the VA rating, the problems, and there's a social contract between the government and the soldier, and I get that. But at the same time, no matter what what group of people it is, as soon as they buy into I'm a victim, I think it's crippling. And so when I decided I'll never be a victim, I also decided I'm never going to commit suicide. I'm just not. I'm a warrior, and I'm always going to fight, and that's who I am. And I just decided that a long time ago. And so in those dark places, some of those thoughts, they're always there. You'd be lying. Anyone that's been in a dark place would be lying if they said those thoughts aren't there, but that's just not me. I'm always going to push forward, and we'll let the chips fall. But the other part of it is, I didn't feel shame in what I was doing. And I think a lot of people were trying to project that. I felt like what I was doing was right. And when you feel like what you're doing is right, it's a little bit easier to keep pushing forward. I think shame is probably the characteristic that can really hurt people in those dark places. And I just didn't have that creep in.
I know exactly how you feel when you're doing the right thing. At times it feels as if it's never going to end. Like for me, I stood up against the federal government and the VA for a 74-year VA legal loophole. And to go in there with no representation, no congressmen, and go into these shark-infested waters alone on an island with anxiety, with depression, with fear. I mean, you're not in your right mindset. And all you're trying to do is get through the day. But knowing that God is on your side, knowing that God was on my side, we prevailed. And look at you now. I mean, you are a best-selling author that is getting a very important message out to the American people and to the world for that fact. Now, you are the hallmark again of a Marine and the epitome of a United States Marine, a man that never gave up through the toughest of challenges, through the toughest of odds, and went up against our nation's top military brass and really got the message out there that we must have accountability. We must have transparency in this country if we're going to continue to be a country like the United States of America has always been.
Yeah, I think in the foreign diplomacy arena, you measure foreign diplomacy by are your sources of national power increasing at a rate commensurate with our peers or at a faster rate. And so we get sucked into this thing of like, there's a problem, we have to chase these problems. And no one's disagreeing that those things are problems. Like, oh, yeah, humanitarian. Yeah. I mean, all these global security. But the problem is if you chase all these problems and degrade your national power, then when there's a time where you actually have to use it, you're at a degraded state. And so there has to be leadership that is strong enough to say, yeah, those things are problems, but right now we have to strengthen our core for sources of power so that when we actually need to use it because it's threatening life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, like, how often is that actually threatened? We are going to be in a degraded state if we don't get our act together.
Yeah, it seems as if our Constitution has been forgotten too, and a lot of things that we've been seeing going on in our country for the last 3 years now, and that's frightening as well. So it takes folks to stand up again for the good of the country and to stand hand in hand as Americans and as patriots, and to demand of our government to work for us, because it seems as if they have forgotten that they do work for we the people. Yeah. It seems as if sometimes you pick up the phone and you call a congressman or a congresswoman or a senator or whoever it may be that, I don't got time for that. I don't got time for that guy. I've got time for her. And they're just constituents at this point because they're in there now. They lobby and they run for Congress on one message. And then once they get in, they completely lie and they completely turn everything around, it seems. Now, there's some good ones out there, but they're few and far between. But again, I felt like, as if we are losing our country, and it takes men like you, true leaders, to stand up in that face of adversity, to stand up, courageously in battle and say, no, this is wrong and this is right. What is your ultimate goal is of course to raise awareness. But if you have one,
the goal is change.
Right.
So I think a step in that process is awareness. You got to make people aware before you can drive them to action. But we need to drive people to action. That's the goal.
So the action to take. What type of action are you asking for people to take, and what sort of action are you asking the military to take to change their step right now to be more, battle ready and be a little bit more smarter out there on the battlefield and not, lose so many lives that don't need to be lost. I mean, there's so many ways you look at it through just in the face of common sense. It just doesn't seem like it's so common anymore. Why don't generals understand that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm with you. I think so. In the book, I give a punch list of ways people can make changes. And so the two ways that we could drive action to make change, but there's like three ways. And I list them all in the book. But number one is the American people can apply pressure on their representatives. Mm-hmm. And so the representatives, whether they're congressmen and women or Senate men and women, the only lever they really have over the DOD is the budget. And right now we're not using the budget as a lever of control. And the American people can demand that from the representatives. And so that's one way. Another way would be the Secretary of Defense looks at all of the list of things that I put at the end of the book and is brave enough to make those changes. And the third way, those are the two main. The third way is a little bit more complicated, but the third way would be right now we operate the national security establishment under the Goldwater-Nichols legislation, and you could update the legislation to make a better interagency foreign diplomacy instrument. And that was really what my master's thesis was about. But that would, again, require Congress to come to some type of understanding. And I just don't know in this day and age that we can make that happen.
Have you ever thought about running for Congress?
I have.
You'd be a great congressman. You know what? We have got a lot of very good people running for Congress. A good friend of mine, Morgan Luttrell here in Texas, is going to be doing some great things. And we're going to be working together on some bills that will help improve the VA. But, sir, you have a calling that has been put on you by God. And I know that you will be beginning to get some signs because when you get a sign, this podcast was put on my heart 46 days ago, and you are episode 35. So to say it's an obsession, absolutely. But if you want to be, if you want to be successful in life, folks, sometimes you need to be obsessed. And obsessions aren't bad. They're bad if you're obsessing about the wrong thing. But when you're obsessing about the right thing and you have your heart in the right place and you're out there to inspire and to motivate and to bring up this next generation of warfighters and Americans to live in this free country. You need to be passionate about that, because if you're not, no one's going to listen to you, and you need to deliver the truth, and you need to do it in a way that makes sense to the American people. Man, what an interview. I literally love you like a brother, man. You've done so much. You've done so good.
I'll be back down in Texas, man. I love Texas, back down the Latrell's Ranch. So, yeah, I'd love to come down. Maybe we could do it in studio at some point. But, yeah, man, I really appreciate your friendship. I appreciate all the hard work you're doing. It's nice in this day and age. These podcasts turn into little town halls. And so I've been campaigning with Senate candidate Don Bolduc, who just won the New Hampshire primary. And, it's funny, we do town halls like 5 a day, and they're like 40 a pop. And I realized podcasts like this are essentially town halls of patriots across the United States that we get the opportunity to speak with. And it's really powerful, because in the mainstream media, there's only certain narratives that get out. And that's why podcasts have blown up. And so, any person that I meet on my trail that is a like-minded person like yourself, I go out of my way to do these, because honestly, I think there's more power in a lot of these little town halls via podcast than there are some of the bigger, 4-minute Fox segments.
Absolutely. I did the same thing, on my story. I've had, probably over 100 podcasts in the last 6 years. And I tell you what, I had more fun on those than doing any national or local, news interview, because I was able to tell the whole story and tell it in a way that made sense and also was deserving of the story that needed to be told. You can't tell a story the way it deserves to be told in 3 minutes.
No. And like, you go into these interviews, and most of them, I don't know what the questions are going to be, but I kind of know the topic. And so like, I'll come up with like one sentence that's like, this is what I'm going to try and say no matter what the question is. And then you like adapt to the other questions. But you're right. Like you maybe get like that one thing you can get across, and everything else is just reactionary. So yeah, I much prefer the podcast format.
What a warrior. Thank you for joining us today, Stuart.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Have me back on, man. Good luck with the success of your show.
We sincerely appreciate everything you have done for our country, the Corps, and the U.S. military. Your service, sacrifice, and dedication to our country is truly honorable, admirable, and commendable. Sir, you are a hero.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations on your book, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Right, Brian.
Until next time, for Tuesdays with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.